Hello Year 13 psychologists, and welcome to this rundown of the psychology course to help you prepare for December exams and beyond. What we're going to be covering in this session is a reminder of the whole course, so what you've studied previously and what we're moving on to in Year 13, some information about the December progress exams, tips for sitting exams successfully, revision techniques, some resources in case you want to move beyond what you have in your folders, and lastly, a reminder that there is always support available from the social sciences team. In Year 12, we covered Paper 1 and Paper 2. So Paper 1 is Introductory Topics in Psychology, and it's worth 96 marks. There are 4 sections, each worth 24 marks in total. Paper 2, Psychology in Context, is also worth 96 marks, but as you can see, there is a double section for research methods. Both papers are 2 hours in length, and each is worth 33.3% of the overall qualification. Questions can be multiple choice, short answer, so 2, 3, 4 marks. You get 6-mark questions and also the extended answers for 8 and 16 marks. And as you know, there's a mixture of knowledge, AO1, application of knowledge to new situations, AO2, and evaluation for AO3. AQA are really keen students are good at research methods because it's the building blocks of all psychology. So not only do you have 48 marks on paper 2, it turns up on any other section as well in the exam papers. In Year 13, we are studying the topics on paper 3. So we have spent some time recapping paper 1 and paper 2 topics when we first came back in September. And now we're looking at issues and debates, cognition and development, schizophrenia and aggression. This paper is also worth 2 hours in length and is 33.3% of the overall qualification. Again, they'll be testing you on AO1, AO2 and AO3 skills, and also you will experience a range of different question types from multiple choice through to essay questions. Once again, remember, research methods can appear in any topic. Many of the topics on paper 3 have links to paper 1 and 2, especially approaches. You will see those basic principles of each approach appearing when we discuss aggression and schizophrenia. And issues and debates, those big themes like nature and nurture, reductionism, they run through those paper 1 and paper 2 topics too. It's really important you have a complete set of notes for all of the topics that can turn up on the exam paper. Your progress exam will have the following topics: Paper 2 Biopsychology for 24 marks and Paper 2 Research Methods for 24 marks. We've chosen these 2 sections because they're traditionally the sections that students tend to find harder than the others and also might put off revising a little bit because they're harder. So we're encouraging you to spend more time on the topics we know are difficult to give you that extra push for revision, which will obviously benefit you in the real exams in the summer. We're also going to test some knowledge from the current work we've been doing on issues and debates and cognition and development. Progress exams are important. They help you analyse the way you prepare for the exam period. How do you find managing your time and embedding revision into your studies? It also helps you try and test different revision strategies. If you've been using flashcards and you find the progress exam that didn't really have a great effect, you found there was gaps in your memory, then it shows you need a different technique for the summer exams. If you find that, say, you're using mind maps and that worked really well, you know to keep using that in future. It also helps you use your time effectively in the exam. It is much better to run out of time in this exam than realise, you need to speed up a little bit in the actual exams in the summer. So it does help you work out how long you need to spend on each different part of the exam paper. It shows you what you already have solid knowledge for, and also what kind of questions and topics you excel at. It also shows you actually where you fall short at the moment and the areas that need extra focus. So it's a really good learning experience. Having the experience of sitting in time conditions in that kind of serious exam experience, it can help reduce your actual nerves in the real exams because you've had an experience of the situation and you're building resilience. So in the summer, you feel far more prepared to take the exam. I'm just going to take a couple of slides to run through some exam tips to help you with your exam technique. So for AO1 questions, you could be asked to state something. It's usually a 1-mark question and they want you to name something. So in my example here, state one definition of abnormality, I'd say failure to function adequately. They might ask you to outline, and this means give a brief summary, so you need to up your level of detail, and the number of marks will give you a clue as to how much to write. So this one here might be about a 2 marker. Failure to function adequately sees individuals as abnormal when their behaviour suggests they cannot cope with everyday life. That will probably give me about 1 mark, and it can cause distress to the self or others and disrupt ability to work or conduct relationships. That might be my 2nd mark. If you're asked to describe, they want a lot more detail. So I've put in blue the extra information I'd put in there to bump up my outline to make it a describe. The maximum AO1 is 6 marks. So you need to think when you're revising, what are 6 things I can say about each theory? What are my 6 key bullet points? And make sure you've got those keywords in there, that specialist terminology. My 2nd exam tip relates to application questions. This is when you're given a scenario that none of us can predict what that will be, and you're asked to use your knowledge to analyse, explain and understand key points about that scenario. So this one here is an example from paper 1 memory. And the question is, discuss 2 or more factors that affect the reliability of eyewitness testimony. And it says, crucially, refer to the information above in your answer. So if you look through the answer, you can see some clues about what factors you could talk about. When there's a leading question in there, did you see the knife the attacker was holding? So that's leading the person to remember a knife. That gives you a clue that one thing you could discuss is leading questions and the effect that has on memory. Another example, the lady here says, I was so scared at the time. So that's a clue that another factor you could talk about would be anxiety. And at the very bottom, I've talked about many times about what happened. So that's a post-event discussion clue because she's been chatting to her friends about what she saw. So that scenario gives you 3 clues as to what to talk about. So, take some time to highlight, notice the key points in those scenarios. I pointed out this refer to the information in your answer. If you don't talk about the situation, then you won't get any AO2 marks. In a lot of research methods questions, it'll say things like, in this study, refer to the example above. So say, for example, a question is, give 1 limitation of questionnaires in this study. If you only talk about a limitation of questionnaires in general, you won't get full marks because you need to say why questionnaires aren't very good for that specific scenario. So say if they're investigating sleep, why might it not be a good idea to use questionnaires for sleep? You can also be asked to evaluate theories or concepts or studies. The most you can be asked to do this is 10 marks, which is about 3 detailed Peel paragraphs or 4 brief ones. I've popped here a very generic mark scheme, and you can see the difference between a level 2 and a level 3 is this idea of how effective the evaluation is. As an examiner, if I can't understand if you're telling me knowledge or evaluation, then I can't really say your evaluation is effective. So if there's no Peel paragraph, if there isn't a P statement signposting AO3, for example, 1 limitation is, a strength is, a problem is, and if I'm left sitting there going, well, are you evaluating or telling me something, then I can't really move you above that level 2, 5 to 9 marks. So the Peel paragraph structure will really help you sort of develop effective commentary. P, make your point, a strength, a limitation, a weakness, an issue. E, give me some evidence that supports that point that you're making. Can you expand it in any way with a counter-argument or a further supporting example? And then link it back to the question. Again, that makes sure your evaluation is effective. You've told me something, so what does that mean for the actual exam question? How does that comment on our ability to accept or disagree with that theory? My 4th exam tip is a common mistake that I see across exam papers. If students see the word discuss, they tend to forget that means you have to outline and evaluate. And I end up with a lot of brilliant outlines, but then the evaluation has been forgotten. Even if it's a 4-mark question, you still need to outline and evaluate. So in this example, discuss 1 limitation of the biological approach. Then the limitation might be that it reduces very complex behaviour down to a very simple explanation. For example, depression is due to low serotonin levels in the brain. I then need to evaluate that limitation. So I could say, however, taking this reductionist approach has actually been beneficial because it has led to the development of antidepressants that some people with depression find very useful. So I've shown you here how you can combine knowledge and evaluation in a discussion question. Below that example are sentence starters for P-up paragraphs to help you create effective evaluations. So always start with your points, so you're signposting to the reader that you're doing an evaluation paragraph. Then give some evidence or example that builds upon or elaborates on the problem strength that you've pointed out. Can you expand it or elaborate it on any way? And then always link it back to the question. So what does that mean for the question? Okay, does that mean we can accept the theory, we have to be cautious with our acceptance of the theory, or that we should reject it for an alternative explanation? My final exam tip is to think about how to move from basic to effective evaluations. So for example, if I'm evaluating a theory, I might say one strength is that supporting evidence is provided by, and I could explain some data from a study. To make that paragraph effective, I could then say, however, there are problems with this evidence. So for example, if the study only had a small sample size of young people, then the support that study is offering for the theory is only applied to young people, so the theory might not apply to older people. You could have another paragraph where you say, an issue with the theory is that other psychologists from different approaches might disagree. So let's say I'm talking about the biological explanations of aggression. Then I could say one limitation is that it ignores social factors. And I could talk about social learning theory and the role media might play in aggression. I can then make that more effective by talking about a study that demonstrates that. So if you can think back to paper 1 and Bandura with the Bobo dolls, showing that young children copied adults being violent to a Bobo doll, then you might say that there are alternative explanations that also have evidence, and that might weaken the support for the biological explanation. You can have a paragraph on issues and debates that are linked to your theory that you're currently talking about. Now, this is brilliant because paper 3, you cover issues and debates, but you can use that knowledge to evaluate other theories in other parts of the exam papers. So, for example, if I'm talking about cognition and development, then there might be issues linked to that cover gender and culture bias, or there might be implications for the real world practice. That's a bit of a hard one to say. So, for example, think about Piaget. A lot of Piaget's work has influenced education, and you can talk about whether that's had a positive or a negative impact on education. You can link it to debate, so nature and nurture debate, for example. You can talk about anything else you can identify from wider reading or any ethical considerations that might have turned up. And lastly, you can think about how alternative approaches might have explained the same findings. There are lots of different ways you can revise, and I think a varied revision schedule is most helpful, not only for having a well-rounded understanding of skills and knowledge, but also to keep you motivated. I sometimes worry that students think revision is sitting alone in a dimly lit room, writing pages and pages of notes, or just mindlessly highlighting class notes or textbooks. Try and vary your revision strategies. I've listed here strategies to help you remember the content, so the theories and the studies, strategies to help you with skills, and strategies to work on feedback. A lot of these link to exam questions, and I've put the link here for the AQA website where you will find past papers, mark schemes and examiners reports. I think that doing exam papers is one of the most effective ways of revising, because not only are you practicing knowledge, you're also practicing your exam skills at the same time. Have a go at writing an exam answer, use the mark scheme to mark yourself. Look at the examiner's report. They tell you the common mistakes and strengths across the whole country who've sat those exams. So they're really useful insight into each question of the common mistakes people make and also what goes into a really good answer. Any topic could appear on the exam papers, so it's really important for each unit you have a full set of notes so you're prepared for any question. You can find all the resources, PowerPoints and worksheets on our Teams channel, and I've popped that image there so you know which one to click. I'd also recommend going to AQA website and looking at the specification and the mark schemes, and you can see the website here. If you want some extra revision, then I would suggest Simply Psychology is a good website to have a look at. There's lots of information on there for the topics on your specification. And I'd also have a look at a site on YouTube called Flipping Psychology. This is basically a flipped learning site. So there's lots of videos for you to follow through talking about different psychological topics that we've studied as part of our course. There are other resources available. You may have a textbook or a revision guide at home as well. If you are using the internet, just be really careful of the quality of the videos or the websites that you're looking at. If it's got .org at the end of it, it tends to be run through education or some kind of charity. You can by all means look at sites that previous A-level students have made, but you might not be able to guarantee the quality of them. So use a sense of judgment about whether it's going to be worth following that site or not. If you're unsure, please see one of your teachers for support. Finally, please remember you're not in this alone. We're all a team and we're all here to help each other. So if you're struggling with a topic, first of all, have you revisited all the resources on Teams? Have you read through them again and made a list of maybe the little sections you're stuck on? So rather than saying, I don't get it, what specific part are you not sure of? Is it that you don't know what a key term is? Is it that you don't understand particularly how that data led to a specific conclusion? Ask a peer for help. Collaborative learning is really effective, and I always think two heads are better than one. Have you tried to access alternative material? So have you had a look at YouTube? Have you had a look at different websites? Because sometimes people explain something in a way that suddenly clicks with you. You can always see your teacher or email us to ask for help. We're here to support you and we want the best for you. Thank you for listening to this video, and if you have any questions, please make sure you pop in and ask your psychology teacher.